Hello, Nic Papalia.
Yeah, good day, Howard. How are you?
All right, I got to ask you about the name Lindy. Has that got any significance?
Well, all I can say is irony's a funny thing, isn't it?
Well, okay, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But how old's Lindy?
She's 9 years old.
How long have you had her?
I've had her the entire time. I've had her since she was about 2 weeks old.
2 weeks old. Okay, did you breed her?
So I went over to Melbourne years ago, about 15 years ago, and I went to Castlemaine to the brewery, and there was a sign-up, visit Bruce Jacobs' dingo farm. So I went out there, and this guy was a bit of a hermit, and he lived with 100 dingoes, and he was trying to raise awareness around the plight of the dingo, and he asked me what I knew about them, and like a lot of people, I didn't know very much at all. And I'd just been to the brewery, and he said, "Look, lie down on the ground," and I didn't have any trouble doing that. And 100 dingoes came up and lay down next to me and on top of me and around me, and they were touching and stroking and pawing me, and I was quite moved, and it was like an epiphany for me, and I've been working hard ever since to try to bring around protection for the only wildlife in the country that's Australian that doesn't have that protection. So I think it's a very important issue.
And what does that mean, no protection? It means anyone can just go out and shoot, see a dingo out in the bush, they can just shoot it, no problem?
Yeah, the dingo is red listed. Internationally, it's red listed as vulnerable species.
Vulnerable, okay.
It's endangered, like it could easily become extinct. The numbers are depleted, and it's on the descent.
Okay. So how many dingoes are there?
There's different sorts of dingoes. There's 4 types. There's desert, there's an alpine, tropical, and Fraser Island, and they all vary a little bit because of their environment location.
They get bad publicity, particularly the ones on Fraser Island, don't they?
Well, they certainly do. Whenever the dingo's mentioned, it's always maligned in the press. It's always sensationalised, and not a lot of common sense or logic or even intelligence. It's usually just about a story that's sort of out of control, and it doesn't do the species any good. But the dingo is so important in the ecosystem because it's the top land predator. It keeps all the other animals and birds in balance. It actually controls the cats and the foxes and the goats and the pigs, and it keeps the rabbits and kangaroo population in balance as well, which in turn looks after the quoll and the bilby.
Now,
it's a Lion King story. It's easy to understand.
Correct me if I'm wrong, unlike foxes and unlike feral cats, the dingo is native to Australia, right?
Dingo is Australian wildlife by every definition.
Yeah, not imported at all.
Not imported. They say it might have arrived about 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, but I mean it's Australian by every definition. Okay. It certainly has a role to play in the ecosystem here, and when it's taken out we have huge problems with wild cats and foxes depleting the mallee fowl, the quoll and the bilby.
Okay, so does dingo go for things like bilbies?
No, they look after the fox and the cat and the goat and the pig, and they tend to, well, the scientists across the country have been calling for protection for the dingo because they tend to go for rabbits and kangaroos, but they also look after and keep those other animals in a cull. So they are actually the guard, they look after the other animals.
Right, now Lindy is an alpine dingo, so I guess that she comes from, originally her stock come from the upper reaches like Kosciuszko, places like that. That's where she derives. Now, how many are left in the Kosciuszko National Park?
Yeah, that's correct. She's coming from a group, in the Kosciuszko National Park there's 140 dingoes of her type, the alpines left. That's all there is. And you know, there's 140 of them. On Fraser Island there's less than 100 dingoes left on Fraser Island, and since 2002 that population's been halved by mismanagement, and it's dreadful. It's appalling, and it's a great commendation and wonderful that people fight to save polar bears and orangutans and whales. But in our own backyard, the dingo is just as important, and it's been maligned, and there's no lobby to protect them, and there's no support to bring around protection because this is an icon that's going to go. I mean, it's part of the very foundation of the indigenous population's Dreamtime stories. And it's also totem to many Aboriginal tribes across the country. It's a very important animal.
Right, so you went to our Parliament today, is that right, with Lindy?
Yes, I did. And that was purely symbolic because Parliament's closed, but it was on the steps of Parliament, and I had a hat placed on her head. It was for the dingoes need protection as well. They need protection too, and the hat was a little bit outlandish and crazy, but it was to draw attention and raise awareness around the plight and It had a prophylactic stuck on the top of the hat that she wore. It didn't stay there too long. She sort of shook it off.
As you would.
Yes.
Not a dumb dingo, that's for sure. Okay, now in Victoria they are protected. You can't just go out and shoot them, but you want the same laws to apply in Western Australia as Victoria, I take it.
I think it should be national. I mean, all the other wildlife in the country...
You're in Western Australia at the moment, so I'm saying you want the same laws here and the same laws right around the country.
Why not? You know, I mean, they've got to protect them. They've got sharks and crocodiles protected as they should be.
Yep.
And all the other animals like kangaroos and emus. And I'm not talking about in farm zones. Of course, farmers are entitled to look after their stock. But in wilderness and desert regions, and where these animals are the top land predator, they are the guardian of the future. They have to be protected because otherwise the whole ecosystem gets out of whack.
Okay, we know foxes and feral cats are certainly a threat to stock. Are dingoes predators as far as sheep and other farm animals are concerned?
They're predators to sheep, but it's a bit of a catch-22. Dingoes are very territorial animals, and if the family structure and the hierarchy is kept intact without the alphas being killed, they won't allow a dog to come into their zone. They'll kill a dog if it comes into their turf. It only happens that there's an anarchy situation of competition taking place when the alpha dingoes are killed, and then they'll run amok and then they will kill sheep. But if people are sensible and they sterilise their dogs and they don't shoot and bait and trap and kill the dingo, and you keep it intact, there has to be zones made with sanctuary locations to protect the animals. If they're looked after and there's a responsible attitude, everybody benefits. It's actually a farmer's best friend because of all the messages that I've just mentioned previously.
Yeah, how much of a setback was it for the future of the dingo in Australia when Azaria Chamberlain was allegedly taken by a dingo?
That has gone into the psyche of every single person, regardless of the outcome and that tragedy that took place. It was 30 years ago, and, you know, if you put it into perspective and rationale, there's been a handful of reported dingo attacks in 200 years, and in Australia there's 15 to 16,000 domestic dog attacks every year.
Yep, we don't go and wipe all them out. Hey?
A few years ago in Perth there was a tragedy that took place with someone's Rottweilers that killed a woman, and it was terrible. It mauled this woman, and you don't hear about that subject being raised again and again, but the Chamberlain case keeps coming up, and it's 30 years on, and I don't see how it does any good for the species whatsoever. It just maligns and denigrates it.
Okay, Lindy lives with you, I take it?
Yeah, she's a wonderful companion.
She an indoor dog?
She certainly is an indoor dingo. Yeah, she is. She's well trained, and they don't have any odour. Their pheromones are not detected.
Really? That's a benefit. That puts her above a lot of other dogs.
And they don't bark, so they're silent. If she was in a pack, she'd howl, but she doesn't bark at all because she's just a loner. And so they're silent, and they don't smell. They're odour-free, which is a benefit.
Okay, and if I came to visit your place, would she attack me as a protection for you?
She's a wonderful animal. I go around to schools and I go around to schools and I go to the parks and we meet the public and we talk to students because they'll be the adults of tomorrow, and we educate them on the plight of the dingo. And she loves people, loves dogs. She's not fond of cats, but she loves dogs and she loves people.
And she doesn't mind being patted?
Well, she loves attention.
And will she sleep with you tonight?
Will she sleep? She'll be sleeping in the house. She's a great companion. She's a good little ambassador for her kind. She's 9 years old, and that's the other thing. Dingoes don't all come in tan and white. They come in black, and they come in white as well.
So what colour?
She's an alpine dingo, and her coat's quite fluffy. She's more like a husky than the lean.
Thinking that, yeah.
Desert dingo. Yeah.
All right, well, just about won me over, I think, Nick.
You're very welcome. I hope it makes a bit of sense, and I'd like to see a few more people interested in supporting the dingo. And if they're going to have a debate in Canberra soon on whether to bring around legislation to protect the dingo nationwide, like they are now protected in Victoria. And I think it's good that they have protected them in Victoria, but it's a bit appalling that they haven't made that right across the nation.
You better take it to
but
federal.
If anyone's interested, they can contact their ministers and ask them, urge them, hey, come on, do this. It's the right thing to do.
You better be on the steps of Federal Parliament House that day.
Oh, well, if you fight my ticket over there, I'll definitely be there.
We'll see what we can do for you. All the best, mate.
Thanks very much.
Say hello to Lindy for us. Nic Papalia trying to get the dingo national protection.